Hello, hello, and welcome. I'm Julie Magus, Director of Experiential Graphic Design here at IA, and I'm pleased to welcome all of our attendees, those within IA and our friends and clients that are calling in. We just really appreciate you joining us to hear from some of our experts in the Experiential Graphic Design group. Just so you know, we say EGD because it's a lot easier than saying Experiential Graphic Design, so we'll shorten that. Here at IA, we're having a great week. We're participating in our third annual EGD week. It's a week-long celebration of the EGD expertise within IA. And we do this to focus in on our EGD expertise, grow our knowledge, gain some new inspiration, and connect and share. And we're happy to share with you today. In today's webinar, in addition to today's webinar, we're also hosting one on Thursday at this same time, 12 Eastern, that will explore different perspectives of experiential design from IA EGDers Chad Finken and Lila Marty, as well as our special guest, Stephen Kellogg of Freeman XP. So Freeman is an event marketing agency that delivers pop-up temporary experiences for many of the same brands and clients that we work with here at IA. So I think it'll be a great presentation discussing similarities and differences and bringing a brand to life in those temporary versus permanent outcomes. So just a little housekeeping. If you'd like to join us for that one, please reach out to IA and we'll send you an invite. And another part of the fun of EGD Week is our annual Instagram contest. Everyone is welcome, both internally and externally to IA, to participate. There's a prize for the best image submitted each day of the week. So just so you know, there's prizes out there. This time it's all about color, a new Pantone color each day. So you can find and post a photo of something that's EGD related in that color, and make sure that your account is public for the week, and make sure to tag IA and include the hashtag EGD Week. So good luck and happy Instagramming. So today's presentation, what we're all here for, is about how we develop user experience mapping to identify navigation needs and how we solve those needs with wayfinding applications, both traditional signage and static graphics, as well as a new digital wayfinding application developed by IA. I'm really excited to introduce you to each speaker. Maria Feleniuk is our senior experiential graphic designer in our Washington, DC office. Her 15 years of experience in all phases of the design process lends some valuable insight to our projects and this participation today. She loves figuring out how a story can lead the design of a space and create a memorable experience for a visitor. So we'll hear about that today. Jessie Kwan is an experiential graphic designer in our Seattle office and also a licensed architect. She's a firm believer in the transformative power of thoughtful design, as she says, and she puts her multidisciplinary background to use pursuing these creative endeavors in a holistic and meaningful way. And I think you'll see that evidence today as well. And Ali Usser is our senior experiential graphic designer and the leadership of creative technology here at IA. He's in our New York office. For Ali, there's no boundary between art, design, and technology. He focuses on incorporating his knowledge of computer science with design and delivers some of our most groundbreaking technology-driven design solutions. So today we'll hear from each of our speakers and we'll hold time at the end for Q&A. If you have questions for our panelists, please type them into the chat box, which you should see over there in the window, and we'll queue them up and I'll relay them and kind of manage that Q&A portion. So, hold your questions to the end, but we'll make sure to get those out there. So with that, I will hand off to Maria to kick off the presentation.
What is a narrative? A narrative is a spoken or written account of connected events. Essentially, it's a story. In this presentation, we will walk you through the steps of how we create a compelling design narrative and why it's essential to the design process. A design narrative answers these 4 questions: who, what, where, and how. Or as I like to call it, strategy first, Pinterest second. The first 3 questions of who, what, and where really have to be answered before we get into the design. I know it's super fun and exciting, and everyone just wants to jump into the how, but trust me, hold off, answer the first 3, and it's going to make your life and design so much easier. So question 1, who? This is your audience. Believe it or not, they're the most important people in this project. So how do you go about figuring out the audience? Surprise, surprise, ask the client. They actually truly know who the audience is. But here's what you want to also ask the client when you're getting kind of to figure out the audience. Are they going to be first-time visitors or repeat visitors, such as employees, current customers or potential business partners or clients? And will they be allowed to roam freely or will they be escorted? It's all very important questions to figure out before you even start about thinking what story you'll be telling them. Which brings us to question 2. What? What are you communicating? The first, you want to start with the tangible items. Is it company brand? Is it mission? Is it history? Does it have leadership principles that must go somewhere? Once you have that answered, think about the intangible items. Is it a particular feeling that you want to communicate? Or do you want to share company culture? Maybe it's a really fun-loving place or it's a more buttoned up atmosphere. Or perhaps for a large project, we want to instill a sense of place, have a destination, get a feeling of arrival. So once you have the audience figured out and what you're trying to communicate figured out, only then do you go to 3, the location. As I call it, it's time to put pen to plan. So here's where you think about the pacing of the physical story, the sight lines. But for complex sites that have varied users, we like to go through user journey mapping. It's more like a tool where we check ourselves to make sure that, hey, we thought about all those people and we're gonna catch them where we need to. So for this user journey mapping, we're gonna actually walk you through a small case study for a project we finished in Sandy Springs, Georgia. It's called City Springs, and it was a civic project, essentially a large campus. It consisted of a city hall, dining and shopping areas, park grounds, performance arts center. As you can see, just very varied amount of destinations all in one campus. So the users were just as varied and made it very interesting to design for and a little bit challenging. So to take a step back, what is user journey mapping? It's a diagram that illustrates the user flow through the space and identifies key interactions and touch points. Again, it's what we use to check ourselves to make sure that we caught those users where we need to communicate to them. So we're going to walk you through just 2 examples of the potential users of the space. And we purposely chose 2 very different ones to show how their experience is going to be very varied in this campus. For when you create personas, you want to kind of get as personal as possible because it's going to make it easier to connect with those people. You really want to emphasize with the users and really put yourselves into their shoes. So example 1, we have Jane, an architect. And example 2, we have John, the father of 2 girls. Second step is you define user goals. So Jane, she's going to be there for a daytime meeting. She's meeting with a fire marshal, not very exciting meeting, and she's there to clarify code. On the other hand, you have John. He's going to be a nighttime visitor because he's there to attend a Mary Poppins Live on stage performance with the kids. And he, on the other hand, is super, super excited to actually be there. They've been waiting for it for 6 months and they just can't wait. Then you look at the plan and you think of your users and you walk through the touch points. So for Jane, remember she is there during daytime, she needs to get in and out. So most likely to just park in the parking lot, run to the reception, up the elevator, and then to the waiting room. For John, we know that the event parking is going to be in the garage. So then he will take the elevator up, get his tickets at the will call window, and then walk up to the front door of the art center. Determining points of friction. So here's where we think about making an emotional connection with the user. So for Jane, you know that she's going to be in a hurry and worried about the outcome. So we want to take points of friction and turn them into design opportunity. So for Jane, it's going to mean that we need to provide clear and redundant directions, as she's most likely, as she's running through her day, to miss a few signs. And we also want to provide multiple ways to receive information. She may not want to sit there and go through the whole directory, and she'll just want to ask a live person. So let's put the directory near the reception desk so she has a choice of which one to use. And for John, who is, again, super excited to be there, it's a long-awaited night out with kids. They have to park in the garage, and we don't want them to feel like they are walking through the back door to this campus. So we want to start creating a sense of place and to extend a warm welcome the first second that they cross into the campus lines. And this is also a chance to provide a moment of civic pride, as it is a local art center. So once you have your whom figured out, to whom you're telling the story, what you're going to be telling them, and where you will be telling them, now we can actually get to the fun design stuff that I promised you of how. And to that, I'm going to hand off the reins to Jesse and Ali, and they will walk you through 3 very interesting case studies and show you how it's done. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. On to the fun stuff. Part of the fun is that we have such a wide variety of users, and our design responses can be just as varied. So today we'd like to walk you through 3 projects, City Springs in Sandy Springs, which Maria has already briefly touched on, Rapid 7 headquarters in Boston, and the Spotify offices in New York. So Sandy Springs is a small town in Georgia. It's a 14-acre campus, and as Maria had mentioned, it is home to a wide variety of destinations. You can see there's 2 apartment buildings, there's the City Hall, and there's the Performance Arts Center. And because this was such a large and complex project, we did map a wide variety of users. But for today, we're just going to stick with our good friend Jane, the local architect. Having looked at what her points of friction are, our main design goal is to create an efficient path of travel for her, weaving in some friendliness so that she gets a sense both of the civic pride and a sense of place for City Springs. John, on the other hand, is looking to spend a great deal of time on site. He and his daughters are out for a night on the town. They're coming in from a neighboring community. This is their first time at City Springs, and they're excited both about being able to spend time together and for their Mary Poppins live performance that they will be attending. One can imagine that John's path of travel may be a bit more meandering as opposed to the straight line that Jane will be traveling upon. So really setting the stage. In order to create a sense of place for this very large complex, we want to develop a very consistent visual language that carries throughout, and that users can come to recognize and understand as being part of the City Springs complex. In this image in particular, you see the pedestrian pylon featuring the City Springs icon and the strong color blue, which will be used throughout. And there are the banners that line all of the walkways. One to help create, again, to help create a sense of place, but 2 to help promote upcoming events that may be taking place on site. Visitors will primarily be arriving on site via car. And so we want to make sure that we have clearly signed all vehicular signage. You can see in the left-hand photo, the very prominent P that directs you to the west parking garage. But again, it's branded with the City Springs icon and name so that visitors arriving on site know that they're at the correct location, can quickly ascertain which direction they need to go to find parking. And once in the parking garage, there are visual cues that help plant seeds for the visitor. Uh, several options could be the large identifier. You see the large number 2, letting visitors know what floor they've parked on. But in addition to that, we also have the color blue. So now we're using a combination of visual cues to set the stage for visitors, really creating a vivid memory for them. And you also see the directionals have already started in the parking garage. The icons also help plant the seeds for future reference once the visitor gets on grade and can follow those certain icons that they've already seen in the parking garage. And now that our visitors have transitioned from being in their car, having parked the car, they're now pedestrians on site. And again, we see this beautiful blue color that indicates that they are indeed on the City Springs campus. And you see the banners again, working to create a sense of place, but also advertising upcoming events and or programs that might be of interest to the visitors. Because these are for pedestrian use, you can start incorporating more in-depth information. Whereas the vehicular signage needed to be easily read at higher speeds, the pedestrian directionals allow you an opportunity to present information that is more detailed. Again, we have the directionals labeled with the City Springs icon, reinforcing that you are indeed on campus. But we have the directionals pointing out all the major destinations. There's also a map of the campus, so you have an overall sense of where you're at and where you might want to go. And there's all these opportunities that could present themselves if you're willing to take a little time, look at the map, and possibly explore, as in John's case. For Jane, she's just going to be looking at the directionals and heading straight to City Hall. And Jane has successfully followed the breadcrumbs of directionals to City Hall. At this point, she's standing in front of the building, so the directionals are really less important. The identifier over the front doors helps her to know where she should be entering the building, gives her a last confirmation that she has arrived at the correct building. And once inside, we have directories to let her know where she needs to go. In this case, the fire department happens to be on the 4th floor. She walks in. The directory is set up next to a reception desk. So if she is in a hurry and happens to walk by the directory, she can still have some connection with the reception desk and quickly ask the question there. And of course, in her hurry, she might be walking past this primary directory shown in the left photo. So in the middle photo here, we see another directory set up that targets a different path of travel. And so it is very important, especially for a visitor who's in a hurry, may not be looking for all the visual cues, to provide enough signage and wayfinding so that they can find their way around. And even if they do miss one or two breadcrumbs, they can still have the information they need to get where they're going. And on Jane's journey, her very last breadcrumb, she comes up to the 4th floor. In the elevator lobby, there is a floor directory letting her know that she has indeed arrived in the correct place. And because she was able to follow the signage so efficiently, she has a few extra minutes before her meeting to take a breath and calm herself down a little bit, as she is concerned about how this meeting may possibly go with the fire marshal. But I heard it went okay. In contrast, John's path is quite a bit different. He arrived on site with his daughters, found a parking stall, and the first thing they did was consult one of the pedestrian directionals to see what's on site and what they could maybe check out before they go see Mary Poppins. And so they have spent their time in the retail district. They had a little bit of dinner, poked their head around, explored the park grounds, and now it's showtime. And so they've made their way to the will call box at the Performance Arts Center. And again, once they enter into the lobby of the Performance Arts Center, they have additional information telling them, one, that they are indeed in the right place, and two, directionals letting them know where they need to go. In the middle photo here, you see the Buyers Theater, very visibly identified, so they know that they've arrived in the correct place within the Performance Arts Center. And then the directories, again, let them know where they need to go. And ultimately, they find their seats and are able to enjoy the evening with Mary Poppins. So we'll go ahead and leave John and his daughters to enjoy the show and head over to Boston to Rapid7, which is a cybersecurity firm headquartered in Boston. While City Springs was a very complex project that required user mapping of a variety of users, Rapid7 is a little different in that the users are quite a bit more restricted. As a workplace setting, the primary user is really a full-time employee. And so basic signage and wayfinding becomes less important as the employee becomes more familiar with the space. And in this scenario, what's more important is about establishing an emotional connection with an employee, celebrating the brand, and working to really um, create a company culture that helps both with celebrating productivity, but also with employee retention. And so we'll follow Jill through the Rapid 7 project. This is a very large project, 170,000 square feet, centered around this amazing atrium. And so all of the design experiences are really complementary to this 4-story atrium. Um, all design experiences are both meaningful and fun. While clients and vendors may really rely on the basic signage and wayfinding, you see the digital directory in the left and the floor identifier in the middle. That doesn't mean that the signage has to be boring. This fantastic bathroom sign on the far right, it's required signage, but it doesn't have to be the standard off-the-shelf fare. It can have personality. You can start infusing your brand culture and really give it a voice. I mean, and really, this is cool. Whoever sees bathroom signs like this, and so it's a combination of providing information that new visitors to this space will need to navigate this space, but also infusing this levity and energy. And eagle-eyed viewers may notice that there is a moose on this bathroom sign. The moose is a visualization of the Rapid 7 idea of a single team. Because the plural of moose is indeed moose, he very much signifies the one team effort that happens at Rapid 7. And he does make cameos throughout the space. So while we may be celebrating a variety of different themes on the 4 different floors, this moose makes a cameo on all the floors to remind you that you are still at Rapid 7, despite the varying graphics. The 4 floors at Rapid 7 do celebrate 4 different themes that tie into the Rapid 7 culture. On floor 7, you see the moose, of course, and this floor 7 does celebrate creative thinkers. And our moose shows up again on floor 6, and you see the supplementary floor identifier. So while you have your basic information, again, these 2 features marry well together to bring a bit of personality and liven up an otherwise rather dull elevator lobby. Floor 6 was about scientists and inventors. Floor 4 is all about sports and star athletes. And I'm sorry, floor 5. And on floor 4, we celebrate the home of Rapid 7, Boston. So you see these great Boston icons. And again, to have even more fun and bring even more energy to the space, we have these great neon features. Because really, I mean, who doesn't love a neon feature? It just, how can you not smile when you see neon? It's a fantastic way to liven up the space. Of course, neon isn't the only way that you can use to liven up a space. These large-scale murals that decorate the alt workspaces in the office help also to liven up the space in a more subtle way, but also very much inspired. Again, they do follow the themes of each floor, so you'll find Freddie Mercury on the creative thinkers floor, and you'll find Muhammad Ali on the sports floor and Katherine Johnson on the inventors floor. And these murals are actually using the color palette of Rapid 7. So this is a beautiful way to marry both the graphics, the Rapid 7 pillars, into a beautiful feature that is inspiring to all. And this is fun because you actually get vignettes of these murals from across the atrium. And so they also become easy identifiers for employees. You know, you can easily say to Fred, I'll meet you in the Muhammad Ali room. So instead of having to rely on traditional signage, you really have a more informal way of interacting and really creating a sense of place. And ultimately, you do want um, your employees to be comfortable at work. You want them to be happy at work, not just for productivity, but also for retention. If your employers aren't happy, the likelihood of them wanting to stick around and really truly contribute decreases. And so again, um, they spend so much time at work creating this home away from home feel. Um, you can see in the photo on the left-hand side, we are on the sports floor. So in addition to that nice lounge area, we have some physical artifacts celebrating sports. And then the middle photo, celebrating the history of Boston. So we have some historic photos. And then bouncing back again in that last photo to the sports floor, just really creating a more residential feel so employees can be comfortable and happy in their space and know that their employer truly cares about their well-being and how they are functioning within the workplace. So City Springs and Rapid 7 were both very physical interpretations of signage, wayfinding, and placemaking. As we move into a different realm and start thinking about how we can explore a digital environment, we have Ali to speak about a beautiful project that illustrates this move towards a more digital interpretation of signage and wayfinding.
Thank you, Jesse. So what I'm gonna present you guys is the Spotify project. So let me get the control from you, Jesse. All right. So I'm sure you guys know who Spotify is. Is a Swedish media service company, and everybody knows their audio streaming services. So basically, Spotify came to us with a big relocation project for interior design. And obviously, there is a big EGD component plus a wayfinding strategy and services that we need to provide. So on the left side, you're seeing their old office from Midtown. They're basically moving to a glass box for World Trade Center. And down at the bottom, we're illustrating the vast amount of floors that they're moving to. So one of the things that we realized during the interior design process is that finding your way in the space is fairly difficult. So we did many studies, obviously, together with them, but we end up providing a different type of service to them, not just an interior design and EGD, but also a wayfinding application for their needs. So one of the things that we start analyzing when we were providing this wayfinding application, which is going to be an application that will be physically installed in every floor. We went through the user journeys. By the way, before I start getting into this, as the creative technology leader at IA, I am pleased to inform you guys that we are basically giving application design services for workplace experiences. So wayfinding application is one of them. So when we start building this application, when we were strategizing with Spotify how we can create a seamless experience, we were focusing on the user groups that they have. A couple of things that are obvious. The local Spotify employees will use this application. There will be visiting employees because they have several offices throughout the globe. So there are a lot of employees are visiting different offices, so they will be using this application. And there will be a lot of visitors also. Artists, work-related people, and general guests will coming to this Ford World Trade Center location. and they're the ones who are going to be using most of the time. And also some facility personnel, when they're trying to find their way, they will be using this application. So those are the user groups that we identified. And after that, we, based on those user profiles, we identified the use cases. So there are two main use cases for our application. One is basically pure search and discovery for wayfinding. So this will allow people to understand where their target location is and try to figure out how they can get there by the help of the application. So that's the main goal that we like to achieve. The other one is getting informed. Obviously, this application will tell the end users the size of the rooms, the capabilities, all the possibilities that my room might have, and also the availability, all that type of information will get into this application. And we also want to inform the end users with different messaging throughout the day, depends on the events and depends on the current activity, the schedule in that particular day. So we did several design studies at the beginning. Obviously, we were focusing on, since this is going to be an app, we focus on Spotify app. That was a very obvious initial start. But we quickly found out that they have a very sophisticated, easy to use and super user-friendly application. And we get a lot of inspiration from their audio app. And also focusing on their branding. So they have this very minimalistic branding guidelines that are mostly circulating around big photography and this something called duotone effect that they're using either color gradients or using two different color gradients, sort of like filtered for those photos. So we were focusing on those type of inspirations from their design guidelines. And we quickly did some design studies and also nailed down the visual aesthetic of the application. Here you see the typeface that they're using. It is a very clear typeface called Circular they are using for their branding and also all kinds of other collateral. So we use different weights for this application. And we are also focusing on the color strategy because we feel like the wayfinding application, it needs to be very robust and easy to use and easy to understand because not many people have like a bigger understanding of this type of application. So we have to make it as simple as possible. So we are using colors to identify, to highlight things within this application and mainly focusing on their brand colors. And I just want to mention the diversity is a big thing for this company. And so they have this vast amount of colors in their color palette. So we're using that for branding purposes. And we also create iconography for them for the application, which goes perfectly in line with what they have in their current audio application. And we introduce some different types in there. And also we create this idle splash screen, which is a big opportunity for us for branding. So moving on to the next slide. This is basically, sorry, going back. I'm having difficulties to navigate. So one of the first things that we designed was a splash screen. So if you go back, yeah. So this the splash screen was a good opportunity for us, not to reflect the brand, but also a subtle communication about the brand, because of the locations of these screens, they are in the elevator lobby. Not only Spotify employees, but also the visitors will see this. And for us, it is a good way of communicating the brand in a subtle way. So we use these color gradients. They're like slowly moving from left to right and changing throughout the day, indicating that what time of the day we are in at that moment. And also there is a big floor number in the middle that gives you which floor you're in. And other than that, it's just very simple branding. But our client has the capability of changing this on the fly, depend on the situation, depend on the event. They can basically change the background. They can put a video, or they can change all the screens to, let's say, orange during the Halloween party or any kind of event. So the first screen that you see when you touch the after the splash screen is the floor plan that you're in. And on the right side, you have this interesting sliding navigation that you can move through the stack, which, as you can see, is 14 floors, is a big campus. So we wanted to give the end users a very fast and easy navigation workflow, and everybody knows how to use a slider. So it's like a common user design, user experience, and user interface design element. And users also can randomly click on the areas and get informed quickly. And as you can see, when you click on any room, it shows you where you can go, how you can go to that location from the elevator lobby, where this application actually sits on the screen. So that is basically randomly clicking and finding out. Is more of a discovery for the end user. And at the bottom of the screen, you have this navigational panel, which you can search through all the rooms. And those rooms are named after a song or an artist that is related to that floor. So as a branding gesture, Spotify allocated different locations for each room, for each floor. And each room in that floor is also named after a song from an artist that is from that particular location. For example, 62nd floor is a New York floor, and Alicia Keys is the artist that they pick, and one of the rooms named after her song. So when you type the name of the song in the search bar, you can quickly see where that room is, and in the middle section, and you can click on that box, and it basically, the user interface, the floor plan takes you to that particular floor and shows you how to get there. And other than just the name of the room, the application is also showing you which floor it is, what the capacity of the room is, and also the availability. The dot on the right side of the box shows you if it's red, if it's occupied, if it's green, it is available. So you can quickly decide if you want to have a meeting in that room. You can quickly decide to go to that room. And moving on to the category section, which we are really proud of, because we really streamlined this process. So by using the categories, you can filter through this vast amount of different types of rooms within this facility. You can easily filter, let's say, large meeting rooms and available large meeting rooms by clicking on those categories. And when you filter those out, you can type in a room name or a floor number that you can actually narrow down significantly the amount of rooms within the facility. So this allows you to focus on what you're looking for rather than blindly searching through the whole 14 floors. So we also develop a backend for this application. This was a requirement coming from them. Instead of creating custom backend so they can manipulate the application, the colors, the name of the rooms and whatnot, we basically keep it super, super simple and make it connected to a spreadsheet. So the admin from our client side, they can actually convert, change, and manipulate all kinds of aspects of the application through the spreadsheet. They can change the color of the background for each floor. They can change the new room names and capacity because some rooms might change in the future. The capacity of the rooms might change, or even the floor plan if they want to, through a UI that they can upload an SVG file that they can change the floor plans and the landmarks within the facility. So this was a very successful approach because of the ease of use, and obviously everybody can use a spreadsheet rather than a very detailed or a custom user interface to update this application. So as I mentioned before, we are fully capable. We are giving these services, start giving these services recently, a couple of years, and the application is growing. So it's not just wayfinding. There can be a simple messaging or brand related custom content can be attached to this. And we are working with all the content management systems and the providers out there. Spotify choose to use AppSpace. Our application is fully capable being in that environment. So feel free to ask any questions regarding this wayfinding app. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ali. So that was an amazing presentation. Thank you guys for summarizing that. I think we learned a bit about how to map the user experience and some end results of how it can look in the end, the fun stuff. So I'm going to reiterate to everyone here to ask a question if you'd like. You type it into the chat box and you'll probably see something that says send questions to staff. So if you have any questions, just type it in there and we will see it, and it should pop up and we will ask those questions for you so you don't need to chime in. Really appreciate your time here today, everybody. And I guess while we wait for people to type in their questions, I have one for you, Ali. I was just thinking about the Wayfinding app and how it just makes so much sense for the users of the Spotify team. Do you see applications of that working for a client that's maybe less tech savvy, and how you might adjust it maybe, if at all, for a client that was a little bit more traditional?
Great question. So yes, that was actually one of the slides that was like I quickly skip at the beginning. So we have this robust process. So like that 6-level process we have. First, we are actually educating our client. At the Spotify case, it was not really difficult because we were dealing with developers, like software engineers and developers. But back to your question, of course, when we are dealing with like financial, like related companies, or like, let's say, a law firm, we need to educate them first and walk them through how an app creation process is actually happening. So in that case, of course, they need to give us all the answers, what they really need as a functionality for those particular application. And we custom develop together with them. And in that case, of course, our focus is to keep it as simple and as user-friendly as possible. And we are getting visual clues from a physical sign, for example. A great example is like those directory signs. You know, there are good designs and bad designs. The designs that are not really communicating the message clearly are the ones that people are missing, misinterpret, or misread. So same thing applies to an app design or user interface design. So we are focusing on visual clues, or like sort of like a brand color that is highlighting a certain functionality. And long story short, we work together with the client and try to come up with as efficient user interface as possible.
All right, so we've got a question from Margot. She asks, how does the Spotify app work for finding individuals if they have offices or are roaming?
Great question. That was a functionality we omit because of the client request. We had that functionality at the beginning. So one of the things that we included in the user interface, you can actually zoom in and out to the floor, almost to the work desk level. And after our brainstorming sessions, we ended up not doing it. They feel like it's not really necessary for their use case. But in other cases, we are working on with another client. They are specifically asking that functionality, looking for the particular desk, especially if it's not if it's unassigned. So they want to find where that desk is throughout the facility. And same thing applies to the offices. So you will be able to type in the person's name, and the system will find and show you how to get there.
That's the future is here.
Yes.
Well, I guess along those lines, how do you adjust for different generations, and would you need to?
Great question. That we
From
are
Becky,
focusing
by
on
the
the
way.
mobile app.
Mm.
So the younger generation, I'm sure everybody can realize that by now, they all live in their mobile phones. So our design strategy is mobile first. So we design the user interface for the mobile first and have it ready and functioning and like easy to use. And then we focus on the kiosk version or a desktop version of the application. And of course, we are also thinking other types of means, like AR is a big technology. We're working on heavily how we can incorporate AR. As a good example, like when you're using your mobile phone, there is a way to overlay information on the camera feed. So when you walk around, you can open up your camera and see things overlaid on the floor, or an information can be on a physical environment overlaid digitally on top, and that can be also updated by the client. That excites us a lot because of the fact that we can overlay things not on the signage, but also we can overlay things on a beautiful wall mural, for example, and that can change over time.
Aha. So here's a
Yes.
spin-off from that. Jim asks, how do you handle the change management elements? I think meaning how do you manage it to change?
Well, since our app is basically fully dynamic and clients can update themselves, and we're giving all kinds of user interfaces, as I mentioned, a spreadsheet is a simple example. They have, and facility managers also, they have all their needs in there. For the change management, for the first portion of it, like moving from one place to another, for example, for Spotify was a big hassle. It was a big cultural shift, and they were more horizontal, and they moved to a place which is completely vertical. So an app like this is super helpful for the end users. And for the facility managers also, they can identify pinch points easily where people have some struggles, they cannot find their way, but also they can identify those meeting rooms, for example. How can we amplify that with signage or with other types of stuff, like with all the environmental graphics?
Aha. So, segue. Margot asks, how was the Spotify space supplemented with static signage beyond the elevator lobby stuff?
Yes, we kept it bare minimum as much as possible. It was unfortunate that the EGD portion was like sort of like cut at the end of the project. We end up having some moments here and there, but not like a full-blown EGD scope. But our focus quickly turned into the general signage, and that was code required signage and some other gestures here and there. Obviously, branding in the reception area, we have the big Spotify logo, obviously, but other than that, we have some moments here and there like beautiful wall graphics and whatnot, but it was basically a regular signage project other than the wayfinding application.
Yeah, of course, we know that you have to have signs, at least in the US. There's a lot of code related signage that you have to have no matter what. But do you think, to that point, and I promise Jesse and Marie will get to you, but another Spotify question. Is there any danger in replacing digital wayfinding with physical wayfinding over time? This is from Matt Weiss. What impact does this have on how people engage, interact, and understand their environment?
That's a perfect question, Matt. Thank you so much. That's an ADA question, actually. And we are like, since we are coming from an interior design discipline, we are really focusing on making sure that anything and everything we put in the space is ADA compliant. And also, as I mentioned before, our app, we were strategically putting our user interfaces at the bottom of the screen, and we're using the screen as in a portrait mode that is strictly for ADA usage. And also coming from the diversity and like glorifying the diversity and like really their brand guides, we were working together with Spotify how we can make it this app for blind people, like just using by audio, and like or like colorblind people, how we can make the visual clues more driven by iconography, or pictograms. So we are certainly focusing on those. And I just want to make sure the digital wayfinding application is not a replacement for the wayfinding signage. The wayfinding signage is not going to go away. That's for the physical manifestation of a sign that is showing your way is a must. But this is an additional thing that we bring in, and mostly for the people that has the mobile devices, and it's a supplementary thing, I should say. But on the other hand, though, we are also focusing on the messaging and direct messaging to the end users, and this technology allows us to send messages on the fly to a particular screen that we can control. We have full control. Let's say Maria or Jesse is using the software, I can send a message as a facility manager to their phone specifically and let them know their conference room is open, or anything related for that particular person can be pushed through the system.
Does the Spotify app spreadsheet communicate, this is from Allison, with a more robust CAFM platform?
Yes. Certainly. This is just something that is coming from them. That's not what we proposed, but our system is capable of getting integrated to any type of system. That is not necessarily a spreadsheet. It can be a database. It can be anything that is online that has an API. We are working with other vendors. We are working with other systems. We're now in the middle of a project that we are integrating Zoom platform, and we are looking to integrate with SeraView or other type of third-party applications. And we're not afraid.
So I just 5-minute warning to everybody, maybe 4-minute warning. Here, shifting focus a little bit, Diego asks, how do you convince clients, this is probably more for Jesse and Maria, how do you convince clients to invest in an experience like Rapid7, but are more conservative and focused on expenditure? Oh, clients focused on expenditure.
I can start this one and Jesse jump in. I feel like when you start talking about feelings and what you want what you want the visitors and guests to get from coming to the place, client get much more excited about the graphics. Like yeah, yes, we want to communicate, that we're a innovative company. And like once you get them to buy into the message that you're trying to communicate, I find it's a little bit easier to then sell them how you're going to communicate the message, right? Get them to buy into the story first, and then they'll get on board. Maybe not all the way, but they'll get there a little bit. Jesse?
Absolutely. And to tack onto that, the idea that companies are competing so much for employees, the idea that if you can get a leg up on your competition by perhaps pursuing an EGD scope in your project, it's well worth the money. It may feel more intangible than the actual design of the space, but it's absolutely well worth the money in a way that maybe can't be totally quantified. It really is about being able to organically build a culture, expressing your brand story to both employees and outward facing towards clients and visitors. So it truly is and should be an important part of your workspace design.
Right, and I think that kind of summarizes how and why, to your point, Maria, we do the user mapping and kind of diving into who the users are, because maybe it's not all neon lights like Rapid 7, but if you've got a more conservative client, you design more appropriately for their space, but you're still starting with that story and the user, and like you said, Maria, the feelings. Start with feelings. What do you want it to feel like for each user type? So I think that's a good point. I think we have time for one more question, but before we go, I don't want to lose anybody. Don't forget about Thursday's webinar, and the way to sign up if you want to is www.interiorarchitects.com/webinars. It's that easy. So that would be Thursday at 12 Eastern. And the topic on that one is scaling the brand experience. All right, last question. This is our Seattle office, and I think they've finished with a doozy. This is probably for you, Ali. What's the next evolution for digital? How can it be used to show conditions for the workers, noise, temperature, lighting, etc.?
Yes, it's the future is very bright, and besides creating apps, and I am also focusing on like bringing technology into the space and using digital technologies as much as possible. So one of the key things I should say is working with the smart building standards and smart building the applications. We can certainly tap into those data and bring to our end users in a more effective way, not only through the apps, but through any type of digital means within the space. But as an experiential graphic designer also, I should say there is a like sort of like an amazing overlap that is happening. Like all the brands that are out there, their brand expressions are happening digitally. So we can certainly see things that are like represented in their big LED, ginormous LED walls, or any type of brand expressions can happen throughout the space by digital means. And not necessarily the screens, but I'm sure many of you guys know we're experimenting with other type of technologies. Can be a kinetic sculpture, can be anything that is collecting data and represent that data in an artistic visual manner, can be another platform for us. But I see this digital transformation happening in our industry also, and it's becoming loud and clear more and more.
Okay, well, we are right at time. I think there was a few more questions coming in, but feel free to email us afterwards, and we'll get back to you if you have any more questions. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. And this recording of this presentation will be available on next week, beginning of next week. I think we'll send it out to all attendees. Thank you so much for attending, and have a great day, and we'll talk to everybody later in EGD week. Thank you guys.
Thank you.